Warning, the story you're about to hear might give you nightmares for your entire life. This is June and Jennifer Gibbons, otherwise known as the Silent Twins. They were both born on April 11th, 1963, and for their entire lives, they refused to talk to anyone except for each other. As kids, they even made up their own language so that no one else would understand them. And they did a bunch of really weird stuff. Like, one twin was not allowed to do anything until the other one was awake. They also took turns eating, so one twin would eat one day and the other one would starve. As they got older, they started committing crimes together, like robbery, lighting things on fire, and even trying to kill each other. Eventually, they were both admitted to a psychiatric unit, and that's when Jennifer spoke to somebody other than her sister for the first time in her life. All she said was, "We have decided that I must die." Sure enough, the very next day, she died from heart complications despite never having health problems before.
This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind at birth, she had spatial awareness. Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched. One day in the living room, the blind woman was talking to a ghost named Ellie. So Ellie said to the blind woman her name and asked her why her face was so messed up. So the blind woman then asked, "Why is my face messed up? What's wrong with me?" And at that point, the father then heard the conversation and snagged the blind woman out of the room and said, "Who were you talking?" The blind woman then replied, "I was speaking to Ellie," and then the father laughed. Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very, very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years." Make sure to like for a part 2.
I asked Google what the most haunted places in my state are, and I came across this bridge in the small town of Avon, Indiana. So I texted my friend and we went to go see what it was all about. Stories say that a woman and her baby were crossing the bridge and tragically fell to their death several hundred feet below, and now haunt those who go under. So I'm gonna go under.
According to the legend, if a train is going over the bridge, you can hear the cries of people who fell off it. There's a train going over it right now.
Nothing weird has happened, but I just feel uncomfortable. I decided to go further under the bridge, and then this happened. Yo, did you hear that? I legitimately heard something, but we later found out what it was. There was a homeless guy up there. That's what I heard. That terrified me. It doesn't explain why my reader peaked, though. 500,000 likes, and we'll bring a Ouija board here.
If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. It all began in 2005 when a group of cave divers wanted to film a documentary in the most dangerous cave in the world. A few hours into their descent, a huge storm erupted, causing the main entrance to the cave to collapse. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks coming from the ceiling, they were forced to swim through an unexplored part of the cave. After diving for over an hour, they came across an island and decided to set up camp until the rescuers could get to them. After 2 days of being trapped in the cave, the cameraman decided to start filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid.
Tunnels, take your pick! Oh, fuck it! Hello! Please! Is there anybody there? Hello!
This is why you should never go on a subway again. So what happened is that one night, a teenage girl was taking the subway home from work back to her house in New York. The scary part is when she went on board, she sat directly across from 2 men with a woman sitting in the middle. The creepy part is that the woman kept staring at her and wouldn't even blink, while the 2 men never once looked at her. Well, at the next stop, a man with a trench coat walked in, but the girl didn't pay much attention to him. The girl kept trying to look away so that one lady wouldn't stare at her, but she just kept looking, wouldn't even blink. Well, at the next stop, that random man with the trench coat pulled out the teenage girl and dragged her out of the subway. She was screaming, asking for help because she had no idea why this guy just pulled her out. But the guy told her to calm down and said he actually saved her life because the woman that was staring at her was actually dead, and the 2 men next to her were holding her up to make her look alive. The random guy with the trench coat said if he didn't pull her out, she was going to be their next victim.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew, Part 5. Despite if you're using incognito mode, Wi-Fi routers actually keep logs of what websites you visit, and the owner of the router can check this whenever they want. So hopefully you don't have anything to hide. A woman in Russia had a shit ton of twins, triplets, and quadruplets with the same man, totaling to 69 children. Nice. tarantulas taste like shrimp. According to some cannibals, the most delicious part of the human body is the eyeball, and they especially like licking them. The skin on your lips is the same skin that's on your butthole. Dolphins sometimes bite off the head of a fish and masturbate into the decapitated body. A bubble caused by false vacuum decay could be growing through our universe right now, destroying everything it touches, and we would have no idea because it travels at the speed of light. 2020, please no.
Sometimes monsters are real. After his parents fell asleep at night, a 9-year-old would sneak downstairs into the kitchen and crush junk food. One night, as he's making his way downstairs, he swears he can hear someone in the kitchen, but his whole family's upstairs asleep. He peeks his head around the corner, and in the kitchen is this skinny man drinking milk straight from the carton with his back turned. The boy's terrified, sprints upstairs, tells his parents, who come right downstairs, they can't find anything. It looks like no one's been in the kitchen. And they ultimately blame their son, and they say, your imagination's just playing tricks on you. The kid knows what he saw, and for the next few days, he felt like everywhere he went in the house, he was being watched. Then one night, he's laying in bed looking at the vent on his ceiling, and he sees a pair of eyes looking down at him. Freaks out, runs to his parents, who come in, look everywhere, find nothing, and blame him again. A couple of weeks go by, and the boy starts to notice a terrible smell coming out of the vent on his ceiling. He convinces his parents to come in and actually cut into the ceiling and go look around, and they find that skinny man, and he's dead. This is why you should be very careful who you talk to online. A 16-year-old girl was home with her mom when she got a disturbing text message from a boy she had recently met on Snapchat. He told her he was right outside of her house, but when she went to look, no one was there. Frightened, she decides to sleep in her mom's room that night, and right before she goes to bed, she gets another text from the boy that just says, "I'm in your house." She shows her mom, who immediately searches the whole house, checks every door, turns on every light. There's no one there. So even though they're creeped out, they go back to bed. The next morning she gets up and she goes back to her bedroom and immediately feels like she's being watched. She checks in her closet, looks behind her door, there's no one there. Then she noticed that the shoe boxes she normally kept perfectly arranged next to her bed had been moved. So she crouches down to put them back in order, and then out of the corner of her eye she notices something. The boy who was texting her was...
This is why you should never drink too much water. When you hear someone say they drank themselves to death, usually they're talking about alcohol. But not this time. This guy's name is Sean McNamara. He was found laying on the floor of his bathroom, and at first they thought he suffered from a heart attack. Then they did an autopsy report, and it showed that he drank too much water too quick, and that caused his brain to swell up. This man must have been thirsty, my god. Usually this happens to like marathon runners. When they get done with a race, you know, they down a bunch of water. But what happens when you drink too much water so fast is it dilutes minerals like sodium down to like dangerous levels. This can lead to confusion, headaches, and in this case, brain swelling. This is why you should never work